Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Marina Mayer, Editor-in-Chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive. Welcome to LINKLIVE. And I'm here with my village, and I say my village because one of the things that we're talking about today is our first Supply Chain Network Summit that we launched yesterday. And I could not have done it without my village. So if you can go around, my villagers.
Hi, I'm Brielle I'm the Associate Editor.
And I am Mackenna Morales, and I am the web editor.
And as you can tell, we were talking about supply chain threats just today because yesterday was our first session, and we had 4 different, we call them webinars, but they're not really webinars. They're live virtual presentations with interaction and commentary and engagement and tons and tons and tons of great content from some very fabulous industry experts talking about supply chain threats. So keep an eye out. That's going to be on demand, coming up in the future. But I first wanted to start off with our first presentation was with Deborah Weinswig from Coresight Research and Joanne Martin from Blue Yonder. And I don't know about you two, but like I was just blown away.
Absolutely.
It was so good. And that was something that we messaged offline about, is that it felt like a conference, only we were at home. We were just sitting on the couch getting all that information. So it was really nice to learn and comfort.
Yeah, and a lot of things that they talked about were, in-store versus delivery trends, how artificial intelligence provides the predictability that helps some of these companies kind of prevent stock outs or prevent, kind of these supply and demand challenges that a lot of these companies have and supply chains have experienced due to the pandemic. They provide some great statistics. They talked about fulfillment and distribution, the repurposing of stores, all the touch points that go into it. Something that I know collectively the 3 of us were talking about offline was that free shipping is not a thing everywhere. Like there are other parts of the world that you have to pay, even if you're buying a small little trinket or a bicycle, you have to pay for shipping. I was floored.
Yeah, me too. That was surprising. That was interesting insight because that really changes strategy for the supply chain and, retailers. It's just interesting to know.
I am fairly cheap and I won't pay for Amazon Prime, but I will pay to get the free shipping because I don't think I use it enough. But even hearing that, I was like, click and collect? Who does that? Who wants to leave their house?
I know.
People overseas, I guess. That's not me, clearly.
But she also said that like those click and collect places, like they have the most refined supply chains, which just boggles my mind. Like here in America, things are free. Sometimes it's not free shipping. It just depends on the company. And, not to say that our supply chains are out of whack because they're not, but it's like she was saying that over in Europe, it's like so fine tuned. And that just is crazy to me that, people pay, they don't think anything of it, and that everything just runs according to plan. And that just, I think to me was the biggest takeaway among many takeaways from that conference or from the presentation. I was just floored by everything that they talked about. And so I didn't know if you had any things that you guys learned or any cool takeaways from their presentation. I thought it was just they had good chemistry.
I personally can't remember who said it, but I know that it was either Deborah or Joanne who said it, so out of the 2. But they said knowing the transparency of your food supply chain is a trend that isn't going to go away. And for some reason, it like struck me as very profound because it's true. And we have talked several times on LINKLIVE about the traceability of the food supply chain and just like supply chains in general and how important it is. And that's only going to change in the future too. We want to know every single step of it. And if you can't provide that for us, you're going to lose so many customers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they talked about the repurposing of stores, which I found was interesting. They brought up dark stores, which, I just started hearing about a couple of years ago in the supply chain, but not really anything significant. And I think now It is becoming more of a significance because, you know, people need the space and more consumers are shopping online. And whether that's from the pandemic or not, that is kind of how the future is looking. And so, you know, they talked about, you know, how these micro fulfillment centers are just going to become more of a norm. They're more mainstream. And I don't know, just to look back at how things have come to this point and how much the industry has changed in just the past 4 months is just a bit crazy. And so they brought a lot of good statistics and facts to the table. And so I really appreciated their content.
Right. That's something that I always ask for the former pros to know, because we're doing the pros to know where are they now series, is their predictions of the supply chain within the next 20 years. And every single person has been like, that's too long. Let's do like years because things change so fast. And we have within like the last 4 months that things that we were doing back in February are completely different. Like, look at us now, we're at home.
Right. And we've been able to we have not missed a beat, and we've all been remote on home, our entire staff completely. And as a company almost. And I think it's just, you know, that does speak volumes to how, you know, things can operate. I thought the other thing, and again, I don't remember which one, if it was Deborah or Joanne, so I will quote both, but they said by 2022, which is in 2 years, US online grocery landscape will see greater diversity than ever before. And that's just in the next 2 years. So it's like, that's just crazy to me how much there's still more change going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote an article for our 20-year anniversary detailing, you know, kind of summarizing what the trends will be or what it might look like in the next 20 years. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of traceability, a lot of, well, what I covered was for SDCE. So less food, but you know, in food, it's really important too. I mean, everyone wants to know where their stuff comes from now, and that's going to be a really important driver in the future. And I think COVID-19 only compounded the trends that were already happening. I mean, people were already interested in online shopping and knowing where their food comes from, and you know, goods come from. But yeah, since the pandemic, it's been much bigger deal and much faster. You know, everyone just adopted all these technologies and traceability so fast.
Yeah, I just felt like they had such good content. I could have listened to them all day. I mean,
yeah.
They just had, and it wasn't just the way that the information they gave, it was just the way that they presented it. They really both had great chemistry. They were just talking, you know, and you felt like you were actually in a room with them. And I think that's something to be said for the way that this whole Supply Chain Network Summit is set up for, you know, yesterday and going forward, because we have 5 more to go throughout the year, is that it is really just, it's a chat. It's a sit down chat to talk about some major issues going on and problem solving solutions. And, you know, we're all in this together. One of the things they talked about was even competitors coming together for the greater good of the industry. And you know, I see that a lot more now, especially on the food service side. A lot of these food service distributors are kind of, you know, who used to be big competitors, which may still be competitors, but they're kind of teaming up to kind of continue delivering food to people. So I just thought that was interesting.
No, you're right. Yeah, partnerships have become very more dynamic lately instead of, yeah, I think that's the future, is people are going to be working more together. I mean, like they said.
Right. Moving on, then we had a presentation from Mark Wheeler from Zebra Technologies. And a lot of what he talked about was, you know, warehouse management operation, you know, zone picking, you know, pretty much how to prepare and protect your supply chain operations. And he really touched on a lot of technical stuff. Some of it I was kind of like, whoa, you know, just completely, I'm not that familiar with a lot of the technology, but he was talking about, you know, he said something about the contact tracing, and I thought it was so cool because, you know, they're implementing wearables and different technologies that can tell where people, not only where they are in the plant, so you can monitor and manage social distancing, but also like what they've touched. So that to me was just blown away, because, you know, you look at a facility as a whole and you think, okay, there's all these, you know, bodies and here's a line, but, you know, let's say they touch this side of the conveyor belt and maybe they weren't supposed to, maybe you don't know about that, but that contact tracing can showcase that. And that just, and that's not just for a pandemic, that's for all kinds of things. I mean, people can utilize that in food recalls even, any heightened zone picking and, just managing food and product better. Pharmaceuticals, I think, could take advantage of that as well. So that was my big takeaway.
Yeah, he detailed a lot of really interesting technologies, and it's interesting that you brought up the contact tracing, because he did say that wearables are kind of the more popular forms of implementation of technology, and I think there's multiple reasons for that. It's kind of the more accessible one. It's much easier to give people glasses. And it's really practical. I mean, it's crazy how much faster the warehouse picking process can be by wearing the smart glasses that directs you in the warehouse where to go. It's so interesting. It's really cool.
Yeah. He talked about, legacy systems, how they can actually hurt a company because they're not providing the right kind of data and protection that a lot of these facilities have. And I think that's kind of what has separated a lot of these companies from being successful and being able to stay afloat in a pandemic versus having to be in crisis mode 24/7. Because when you have the data at your hands, you can easily, be flexible and kind of move around. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And he talked about voice direction and the 5 phases of worker and workflow operations, and basically how to open up America again and what that means for a lot of these operations in terms of social distancing, kind of maintaining all of these health standards. And I don't know, this technology stuff, I don't understand a lot of it. I understand it enough where I'm like blown away and just can't even fathom that even exists.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So any additional takeaways?
Well, there's a study done a few years ago that said that at a minimum, 6 hands touch every single package before it even gets to your place. And it's probably way more than that. And I think having that technology to trace it all would be very beneficial, because we do get sick. What if something happens? What if something breaks?
Right.
My concern for everything.
Well, and the people getting sick. What happened?
Oh no. I have it right here on the app. It was Mackenna. She broke it.
Yeah.
Contact tracing says.
Can you just imagine if you could scan a QR code and you can see everybody that touched your package, and you could narrow it down to who broke your glass that got delivered to your house.
Right. I mean, it's just
game changer. That person probably wouldn't have a job, but it would be a game changer.
But it would be, because I think that would help with the training. I think that would help with traceability. I mean, that kind of exists in food already. I'm sure it exists in non-food, but it is a game changer, because especially now with COVID, and people getting sick, they just shut down the whole facility. Well, you don't need to shut down the whole facility if you clean it, right? You just need to know what that person touched. So if they didn't touch this whole line, well, technically that whole line is still salvageable. So, it's kind of waste reduction at that point. So, I don't know. I just thought his whole presentation was super cool and just very informative about, a lot of the technologies. And it's not just Zebra technologies, it's technologies in warehouse management. It's, overall what is out there, both hardware and software, that companies can be taking advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Warehousing has always been told that it's not the coolest job in the world. It's not the sexiest job. Right. But when I started working for the supply chain industry, that was the thing that I found the most fascinating, was what was going on in the warehouse as well.
Yeah.
We've always been told about robots and how they're going to take over, but it's already happening. And it's already making people's lives so much easier. It's how we get our stuff in a day and a half.
Oh yeah, it's the future. So the next presentation was from Neil Kuhl from BSI Americas. And he talked about the importance of supply chain resiliency. And BSI, which I learned during our test run, which I don't think I was fully aware, even though I'm very familiar with the company, but BSI was the founder of the ISO standards, which everybody in manufacturing uses. So they kind of set the stage for how things are categorized and what standards they meet. And so that alone was just cool to me. And something he said, and I can't remember if he said it actually in the presentation or if it was when we did our test run last week, but he talked about how like when you have somebody who's sick in a facility, yes, you shut down the plant and you clean, but he goes, we have to actually implement a system that cleans out the ventilation systems because that's the air that you breathe. And we wear masks to protect ourselves. I never thought of something like that. And it just struck me as like, it was like the wow moment. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You would have to clean out everything, all the air filtration that you breathe and that other people are breathing to prevent from that spreading. So
like cleaning out a pool.
Precisely, exactly. Yeah, it was just really cool. So he talked about, business continuity, disaster recovery, horizon scanning, and how that's implemented to help look ahead and prevent, help companies kind of forecast ahead, here's your scenario if a pandemic were to hit again. Let's say this doesn't go away anytime soon. Let's say the resurgence happens again in the fall. They have abilities to kind of take all of your supply chain and put and find the holes that exist and tell you how to fix them. And that's, horizon scanning, and that's helping companies kind of plan ahead a little bit more. And how to identify a critical business supplier, which I thought was kind of cool. And the 4 generations of pre-qualification requirements for when you select a supplier, because that supplier vendor partnership is so integral in getting product out and maintaining quality and maintaining standards. And so I just thought it was cool. You need a cool accent, so.
Very British. A big part about supply chain resiliency is being flexible, and that is something that all 3 of us have talked offline about, because we do talk about the industry all the time with each other, but we always ask the question, is the supply chain as resilient as we think it is, or is it just like flexible enough to make these changes? And that's what you have to be, and that's what he stressed a lot in his presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, there's a difference between being flexible and being broken. And, everybody says, oh, the supply chain is broken because you can't get toilet paper. Well, it's not broken. It's just, it's like you've written in other articles, Mackenna, it's just bending a little bit. And they're working on it, but it's not like you're never going to get toilet paper ever again. That's a broken supply chain.
Right? Stop buying 40 rolls of toilet paper.
It's not The Walking Dead, people. That's what I felt like when I was grocery shopping. I remember the day after we came back from Modex, and I went there, and we were in Atlanta. We didn't know how severe this was. I just knew that school was canceled, and I was kind of like, in that moment, like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Kind of, oh my gosh. And I was like, well, let me at least get food. And I was like, what?
That's scary.
Yeah.
I can't even do that. I can't even get Tylenol. And that is necessary when school is canceled. So yeah, that was a cool presentation. I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Our last presentation had a lot of good information. I have a whole page and a half of notes, which I don't need to share with everybody. So I want you to log on and watch it. But, and these poor gentlemen, I butchered their names so bad in our test. It took me 20 minutes to finally figure out how to say it. So when the day of happened, I think the whole day I was so nervous about, I think I was more nervous about pronouncing their names properly than anything else throughout the day. And when I got the thumbs up from Brugu, I was like, oh my God, I did it. But Brugu Pange, and Sean,
guru.
I know he's the Brugu guru, and Sean Maharaj from Arit. Holy cow, were they intelligent?
And very funny.
They talked about all the protocols and operational shifts and worker preparedness, pretty much anything that you need to do to prepare your facility and your workforce and your product for returning to work from a lockdown. And they provided a lot of great statistics about freight and about truck trips and about retail. And, they said that since the pandemic started, grocery e-commerce has increased 300% and created 8,500 warehouse jobs just in 3 months, 4 months. Well, it's June. I don't know when they stopped doing it, but it's created 8,500 warehouse jobs. That to me just was like, I was floored.
Mm-hmm. They had a lot of great advice for coming back to work and for, how to operate and be safe. But I also thought, because beyond COVID, they had some great advice as well. And I think one of the things that people don't think about is making sure that your brand values extend all the way through the supply chain, because, a product has a long chain of partners, companies, and, efficiencies and operations that it goes through before it gets to the consumer. And so if your brand really cares about sustainability or, certain things, you want to make sure that your whole supply chain fits into that, because consumers will know now. And it's important if you want to be authentic. And that's, the number one thing that people care about. So you have to make sure that all those partners that you're working with fit into your core values.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They also compared going back to work to what it was like in the 2011 and 2008 recession, and like the fear that people have now compared to the fear of the Ebola outbreak in 2014. And then they also compared what the state of the nation is like compared to what it was like in 9/11. And I messaged you guys, and I was like, I've been asking this question for weeks now. And so just having that comparison, because there's a lot of young people in the industry that are in their early 20s who are just too young for those scenarios. And
looking at you,
like, I had no idea. And so when they made those comparisons, it finally made sense to me, because before people would just sprout it out and I'm like, what? But it helped. It really helped.
Yeah. I mean, the fear is real. I mean, it's when an economy shuts down, and it's not just a state by state, it's a whole nation. I mean, that presents a lot of fear. And the fear, I think the one difference is that and it's not really a difference. It is very similar, because I was a senior in college when 9/11 happened. I graduated, and the fear of finding a job after you graduate, and, the recession hit, and it is very fearful. And 9/11, it was an event that happened, but everybody was fearful that it would happen again. Here we have, this pandemic that just keeps going. And now the fear is, will it happen? Will we get a second wave? Will we ever recover? Will there ever be a vaccine? Will we ever go back to normal? So yeah, they kind of touched on a lot of that. And they touched on a lot of the technology that's out there to kind of, help track people a little bit better, to protect a workplace so that companies can continue to move forward, even if somebody does get sick. I thought this was, they talked about the Springdale Tyson plant. They had that whole slide on, how that plant had to shut down in Springdale, Arkansas, because somebody had tested positive. They said 199 of those workers tested positive, but only 3 had symptoms. That's what they said. I about fell out of my chair, because to me that shows that, oh my gosh, that literally everybody is walking around with something. And until you get tested, nobody really knows. And so their point was to try to implement and tell workers, and tell companies, enforce a little bit of these testing so that you can secure your facility a little bit more, continue doing the temperature checks. It's not just masks and social distancing. There's so much more that goes into it. And so I was a little floored by that. And then one of the questions was, well, how do you continue to track these employees' health without infringing on HIPAA? And I thought that was interesting, because you don't think about that, but then it's like, well, that's a whole nother conversation. But, there's ways to do it, because at the end of the day, companies need to protect their staff and, the food or the whatever it is they're producing. Think about, they talk about like clothes, you go inside like an Old Navy or a Target or wherever you shop, and you try on a pair of pants, but let's say even if you don't buy them, you're still trying them on, and maybe 5 other people tried them on before you. And then before that, 10 other people have touched on, maybe it was on the floor, maybe this. So it's like, okay. That's good to know. But it's the same, even if it's
about it.
You don't think about it, but even if it's shipped to your house, even if you're not going in the store, you're still trying it on. It's still, who knows where it's been.
Yep.
So, and then they talked about all the Black Swan events, and, they had a lot of great statistics. They broke down the PPE costs, back when they were, back was in January versus now, how the truck trips are down 11%. But the freight fulfillment time is up 433%. So it's like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So for those listening who want to learn more and listen more, fabulous presentations, just go to foodlogistics.com, sdcexec.com, select our SCN Summit section. They will be posted on demand, I hope within the week. I don't know, email me if you have questions. But one registration gets you all 4 sessions, guys. That's such a deal. Such a deal. And July 28th is our next one, Life After the Coronavirus, which I talked to one of our speakers this morning. It should be saying, we should rephrase it to say life during the coronavirus, because for a lot of companies, they're still in recovery crisis management mode. So these speakers are so ready and so prepared, and will come with all kinds of great talking points. And you have to go to our website to figure out who they are, because my brain's a mush ball right now.
I thought you were just being coy, like, go to our website.
That too. Yes, you have to go because we want you to visit our website. So I don't know, but I appreciate both of your help, and the social media, I thought was great. They go to our social media pages because they did some great snapshots which show real life versions of really how this works. They're not just webinars, they're in, I don't want to say in person. What did you call them yesterday, Brielle? Fireside chats.
Yeah, well, the fireside chat was our first session. The other ones were presentations.
Yes, that's right. So we have a combination of both. The presentations, they're still being done via Zoom. There's still we saw some great interaction from our audience on the chat, a lot of good questions, a lot of good follow-up. I've already kind of connected everybody, the speakers and the registrants. So a lot of good stuff. So I was pretty excited. I'm looking forward to the rest.
Yeah, and you don't have to leave your couch.
You don't. I don't even care what kind of pants you wear.
No more freezing. Just stay home.
I know. And some of them, you can eat, while you watch. We don't know if you're eating or not. So
lunch and learns, you don't have to wear makeup. It's like the scenario.
You can do it from your couch, from your living room, from your office, wherever. And it was great. I thought it was really great. I enjoyed it's your first one, so you never know what to expect. We don't have anything to compare it to. It was supposed to be an in-person conference later this year. COVID happened, so we decided to regroup, and I'm really glad that we set it up the way that we did. It sounds like somebody is literally walking on Brielle's roof.
It's the Angels playing bowling.
I was like, wow,
no, it's thunder.
Okay. So go to our website and like us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
Just how cautious you were.
All these sites, I have no idea what I'm doing. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, and you can all social media platforms.
All of our social media platforms. And these girls have been rocking it in their Instagram posts, which they made me do one the other day. So you got to go check that out too, because that was my first IG post. Moving up in the world, ladies.
Subscribe to our podcast on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts.
There you go. See, knew I was forgetting something.
And then we extended the deadline for our Women in Supply Chain Award until July 17th. So make sure to nominate a woman today. And then the FL 100 Award is open, and so is the SDCE Green Award. You can find all of those on our websites as well with the /awards.
Nice. Yes. So just go to our website and just take some time and just peruse around. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback, you know how to reach us. We love our readers and love all of the commentary and the feedback. So we appreciate it. Foodlogistics.com, stcexec.com. Thank you to my village. So, and thank you everybody for watching, and hope to see you at our next SCN Summit, July 28th.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.